What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And if you are new here, make sure you smash that subscribe button because we are talking 49ers football today, and trust me, you do not want to miss what we are about to break down. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the San Francisco 49ers just quietly picked up a gift from the New Orleans Saints. And when you stack this move on top of everything else John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been building this offseason, we are looking at a defensive front that has the potential to be absolutely terrifying heading into the 2026 NFL season. So let's get into it. All right, so first things first, let's set the table here. The San Francisco 49ers went out and signed defensive lineman Cameron Sample to a one-year deal. Now, to the casual fan, that might sound like just another depth signing. Just another name being thrown onto a roster during the quiet part of the offseason. But if you've been paying attention to the NFL over the last several years, you know that Cameron Sample is not just a body. This dude is a legitimate pass rusher with real upside. And the fact that he spent his entire NFL career to this point in Cincinnati with the Bengals before landing in San Francisco, with the connection that he previously played in New Orleans with the Saints organization, makes this move even more interesting. Cameron Sample is a 26-year-old defensive end out of Tulane who was drafted by the Bengals back in the 4th round of the 2021 NFL Draft. And here's the thing about Sample that people sleep on. This is a guy who came into the league with a first-round caliber skill set trapped in a 4th-round draft position. His career numbers, 85 total tackles, 7 sacks, a forced fumble, don't fully tell the story, because Sample spent a significant portion of his career fighting through injuries. In fact, he suffered a torn Achilles in 2024 that cost him essentially an entire season. That's the kind of injury that makes teams hesitant, that drops your market value, that has you signing one-year prove-it deals instead of the long-term contract you were on track to get. But that's exactly the reason the 49ers were able to snag him. And if Kyle Shanahan's defensive staff can get Sample back to even 80 or 90% of what he was before that injury, this signing is going to look like absolute highway robbery. Now, the Saints connection matters here for a reason. The New Orleans Saints have been in rebuild mode, quietly releasing and letting go of players that other organizations can immediately plug into winning situations. The 49ers have been smart enough to recognize that and capitalize. Getting Cameron Sample from a roster that isn't competing for anything right now and giving him a chance to thrive in San Francisco? That's not luck. That's front office intelligence. And it fits a very clear pattern that we've seen from John Lynch all offseason long. The 49ers are not just collecting names. They are building a specific type of defense, and every move tells a story. So let's zoom out and look at the big picture of what this defensive front is shaping up to look like. Because this is where things get genuinely exciting. The blockbuster move of this offseason, the one that changed the entire conversation around the 49ers defense, was the trade for Osa Odigizua from the Dallas Cowboys. Let's be real about this. The Cowboys gave this man an $80 million extension just last offseason. And then, because they went out and added Kenny Clark from the Packers, and then turned around and traded for Quinnen Williams, yes, Quinnen Williams, they suddenly had too much interior talent. So they shipped Odigizua to San Francisco for a 3rd-round pick. Let me say that again. One of the best interior pass rushers in the entire NFL. A guy who in 2025 generated 52 pressures, the 6th most at his position in the entire league. A guy whose 20 quarterback hits were 2nd among all defensive tackles. A guy who is only 27 years old. And the 49ers got him for a 3rd-round pick. In a year where San Francisco only had 20 sacks, the fewest in the entire league. In a year where they ranked 29th in pass rush win rate. You cannot make this stuff up. The Cowboys did the 49ers a massive favor And now Odigizua is in Santa Clara talking about how the handcuffs are finally off. He came out publicly and said that in his very first defensive line meeting with the 49ers, the coaches were already drawing up new techniques and new ways to deploy him. He said, and I love this quote, "You're going to slow down just a tick, and that's going to give me the edge." That is the mentality of a man who feels unleashed. That is the mentality of a player who knows he's in the right situation. Osa Odigizua is about to have a career year, and he knows it. And look, even Odigizua himself acknowledged what this roster is building toward. He went on the Richard Sherman podcast and said that making a deep playoff run and winning a championship is absolutely his goal. And that being on a team that has reached the Super Bowl in 2 of the last 6 seasons gives him genuine belief that it can happen. He mentioned bringing Dre Greenlaw back, the addition of Mike Evans, and everything surrounding this team as evidence that the organization is all in. And he's right. Because let's talk about Dre Greenlaw for a second, because the return of this man to the 49ers is something that truly cannot be overstated. Greenlaw is a linebacker, not a defensive lineman, but the reason he matters to this conversation is that the 49ers defense doesn't work in isolation. It makes Odigizua's job easier. It makes Cameron Sample's job easier. It makes Nick Bosa's job, when he comes back healthy, dramatically easier. Because when the linebackers are cleaning up everything in the second level, the defensive linemen can pin their ears back and rush the quarterback without worrying about what happens if they get beat. That's the beauty of this defense. Every piece feeds off every other piece. Greenlaw also brings something you can't put a number on. He already knows this system. He already knows this locker room. He already knows the expectations. There's no learning curve. There's no adjustment period. He walks into training camp in mid-July, and it's like he never left. That kind of familiarity is worth more than people realize, especially on defense where communication and trust between players is everything. And then you add the draft class on top of all of this. The 49ers went out in the 2026 draft and selected Romello Height in the 3rd round, an edge rusher with legitimate upside who can develop behind veterans and eventually step into a serious role. They also took Grayson Halton in the 4th round, a defensive tackle who adds more bodies to an interior that is suddenly one of the most stacked in the NFC. You couple that with Sam Okwainonu, who the team re-signed, and you have a defensive line room that has genuine depth for the first time in years. Now let's put this all together and talk about what this defensive front could actually look like on a Sunday afternoon when these guys are all healthy and operating at full capacity. Because this is the part that should keep NFC offensive coordinators up at night. You have Nick Bosa on the edge, still one of the most dominant pass rushers in the entire league when healthy. A guy who changes game plans just by being on the field. You have Osa Odigizua blowing up the interior, creating havoc from the inside out, generating pressure that collapses the pocket from the middle and forces quarterbacks to step into Bosa's path. You have Cameron Sample rotating in as a fresh body on the edge, a guy with explosive first-step quickness who can win with speed and power. You have Romello Height as a developmental wild card who could flash and surprise people in his rookie year. And you have depth pieces throughout the roster who can keep everyone fresh through a full 17-game regular season and hopefully deep into the playoffs. And behind all of that, you have Fred Warner, the best linebacker in football, full stop. Alongside Dre Greenlaw making every play in the second level that the defensive line doesn't finish. This defense could be terrifying. I want you to think about this realistically. The 49ers went from 20 sacks, last in the entire NFL, to potentially fielding a defensive front that includes a fully healthy Nick Bosa, Osa Odigizua, and Cameron Sample all rotating along that line. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened because John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan identified the problem, went out and attacked it in free agency and through the trade market, found opportunities where other teams